Hey, Cut the Shit listeners. You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Go check us out. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Cut the Shit, a podcast series that aims to take a closer look at the impact of the IT industry, both the good and the bad. Cut the Shit is brought to you by Plow Networks, a managed IT services company based just outside Nashville, Tennessee. I'm Brian Link, COO here at Plow, and I'll be your host for this series. I'll ask questions, and with the help of our guests, try to dig deep on some of the key challenges we all face dealing with IT. So with that, let's cut the shit and get started. On today's episode, I'm very excited to give you the second part of our two-part conversation with folks from Spero Health, a Nashville-based outpatient drug and alcohol treatment provider with 95 clinics and over 35,000 patients served, and who also happens to be one of our clients. On our last episode, we heard from Chris Rathermel from the IT side of the house, and today we have Chris DeGeorge as our guest. The other Chris serves as Spero's Director of Operations for Tennessee and West Virginia, overseeing 30-plus clinics and approximately 250 employees in those regions. As a reminder, my goal for this series has been to hear from both IT and the business on what IT does for Spero, how each side thinks about that role, what they do to gauge its effectiveness, and ultimately how both are working to make IT help Spero be more successful. I hope you enjoy the second part of this conversation with Chris DeGeorge. Chris DeGeorge, how you doing today? Welcome to Cut the Shit.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're here. This is the second part of a series. We had your compadre Chris Rathermel on previously, and so this will be fun because I got to kind of get the technology perspective, and now I'm gonna get the business perspective from Spero. So before we get into the meat of the discussion, how about we start with just you give me an example. I like to ask this question; it's always get kind of interesting answers. Give me an example of an interesting use of technology or a hack that you've seen recently. Could be at work, could be at home, could be something you read about.
Well, fortunately, we did something really exciting here at work recently because we've had a issue engaging our patients, and unfortunately, our built-in applications through our electronic health record system did not have a way for us to conveniently engage our patients. And so, what do we do about that? Well, we were able to create and partner with a application, a really cool app that really allows us now to seamlessly talk to our patients. And we work with a very vulnerable patient population, so connection is very important. So being able to create this tool to speak to our patients really around the clock has been a game changer. So that's been really cool.
Makes sense. Makes sense that, the extension of the mobile experience, or the ability to leverage the mobile experience to engage customers, employees, patients, suppliers, right? That's been probably one of the most interesting and beneficial, I think, applications of that technology for sure. All right, well, let's get to it. So the folks don't know you, so give us a quick thumbnail sketch on your background. I know you're a Vanderbilt guy and you did some time consulting and you got tired of traveling. So pick us up from that point and kind of get us to what you're up to today at Spero.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, nobody can call me a front runner. I'm a bleed black and gold. So
long suffering, in other words.
Was raised on Vanderbilt football and support them to this day. So I always say nobody can call me a front runner. I like to dig in when times are tough. But no, I spent the beginning of my career in healthcare consulting, and then from that, getting away from the road warrior schedule, got into multi-state, multi-site operations, PE-backed companies. I spent 7 years in the dermatology consolidation space, and have spent the past 2 years with Spero Health here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Gotcha. All right. And again, this is the second part of a two-part conversation. So we got a little background on Spero 2 weeks ago from Chris Rathermel in IT. But for those who maybe have missed it, give us a quick recap of who Spero is and what you guys do.
Absolutely. So at Spero Health, we help treat folks suffering from substance use disorder, primarily opioid use addiction. And frankly, with that, I was blind to the opioid epidemic prior to coming to Spero. And in my 2-year journey here, just seeing the impact and the issue that it is across America has really been a alarming. And so at Spero, we have 95 locations across 6 states, and we treat patients in an outpatient setting. And so we really focus on the MAT aspect, but as well as counseling, because engaging that whole person is very important. I always say that when we are treating a patient, look at their journey as a life raft, and the boat keeping them afloat is a medication assisted treatment. However, the oars that help that patient get to where they want to be in their recovery journey is our counseling, our recovery support services. And so it's been an incredible journey so far, helping to live out our mission of saving lives, instilling hope, and restoring relationships.
And so you've been there a couple of years. What's been the growth footprint? How's the company grown over that 2 years? Are you guys in growth mode? What's that look like for Spero?
So we've definitely been in growth mode. When I started with the company back in May of 2021, we were at 48 locations. Since then, we've increased to 95.
So doubled, basically. Yeah.
Absolutely. So definitely in growth mode.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit then about your particular role at Spero.
So I'm a senior director of operations. I have operational responsibility of 2 of our markets in Tennessee and West Virginia, roughly about 30 locations. And with that, a patient population of about 4,000 patients.
Gotcha. And how long have you been in this particular role?
I've been in this particular role for the past 7 months.
Okay. All right, perfect. Well, that gets us kind of up to today. And so I think, again, the goal of the conversation was to talk this idea of I call it the conversation. Some companies, it might not be a conversation. I certainly hope it is a conversation between IT and the business, right? In terms of making sure that those two groups understand each other, and trying to get a handle on how they see the world, so to speak, as it relates to the other. So Chris Rathermel, your compadre, did a nice job a couple weeks ago giving us that perspective. And so I'm going to ask some different questions and some same questions to kind of draw out, hopefully, I think you guys are pretty well aligned because, again, I cheated a little and I already talked to you, so I already know some of the way you think. But it'll be interesting, I think, to see sort of the different perspectives, even where there's, I think, pretty good alignment between kind of the way you view the world, right? Because where you sit dictates where you stand, so to speak, and that affects your view on things. And so that's kind of my hope today. So with that. Within the role that you have today, talk to us a little bit about sort of what's the scope of responsibility, what's the nature of the job, and what are some of the areas that you get into as part of that?
Absolutely. So really, my scope and responsibility is for growth and all operations, both business and clinically, within our 2 states. And so with that, primarily driving our patient retention is a huge focus, because people suffering from substance use disorder, our statistics show that if we can keep a patient for 90 days, they are 95% likely to stay with us for over a year, and shows that you need about a year and a half of medicated assisted treatment to really get on that sobriety and recovery journey. And so we're laser focused on our mission of, once a patient comes to us, engaging them. Hey, how do we keep them in treatment, right? And that's where we've really focused on the ways that we can consistently communicate with a patient.
So this is where the app comes into play, like we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely, because we know that our program works, and that this is a vulnerable patient population who is, frankly, used to the stigma, quite frankly, that is out there. And so the more that we can engage, give them a hug, let them know that we care and we're here to help them, the better we all are, frankly.
So, okay, so you got 30-something clinics. Talk to me a little bit about how many employees we're talking about.
So we're talking right around 250 total teammates, an array of providers, nurse practitioners, as well as doctors, counselors and medical assistant and front office teammates, as well as our facility administrators.
So is that roughly, you got 8 in a facility, or are they of different sizes?
So different sizes, but the average facility will have about 8 teammates per location.
So have the responsibilities of the role remained fairly static since you took over, or has there been any significant changes, that could have been external or internal that have affected the job?
So our world has changed quite dramatically just in the past 7 months, because in the substance use disorder space, there's what's called the DEA X waiver. And so a provider, to write a controlled substance script, you could only write 275 controlled substances a month. And so earlier this year, Congress actually passed some legislation that eliminated that X waiver. And so, hey, why is that important? Because frankly, expanded the access that our providers have to care for patients. Because when you think about it, the provider in 1 month could only see 275 patients. Now, with this flexibility, it allows us to improve our access to our providers, frankly. And so that was a big change, because we were able to essentially increase our access to patients throughout all of our states. And so that was a pretty big positive change that has happened just this year.
Given your day-to-day role, how much time, let's kind of transition to a little bit of the technology talk. How much time do you spend thinking about technology as it relates to what you're trying to do? And in that answer, if possible, can you divvy that up into maybe what I'd call strategic thinking versus tactical?
Absolutely. And I think something that's been unique about my journey, because earlier when you asked me how long I've been in this role, I've been leading these 2 markets for 7 months. Prior to that, though, I was brought in and I created new service lines, and it was really all based around technology. And so a unique perspective, a challenge that we had, because we talk about the retention, the access to care, and improving patient outcomes. Well, one thing is that we have found that patients, unlike other specialties, if we don't get a patient in same day or next day, the likelihood of them showing with each day from the time they call us to the time they're seen dramatically drops. And so, frankly, what we did in the beginning is I created our first call center, because with our, at the time, 48 locations, you'd have phone traffic coming in to each of those locations. You'd have teammates answering the phone while trying to check folks in, right? And so strategically, hey, how can we scale this? And so we centralized our scheduling. And what that did was that improved 2 things. One, it improved the access for our patients, because we improved by 100% the wait time that a patient had between the time they
Like
called to the time they
answer
were
the phone.
into our exactly
Right.
into our clinics. And then from that, something else magical happened. That no-show rate improved by 100%, because again, we're talking about a patient population that's very vulnerable. If we're not helping them right then and there, they're going to look for someone else. And so to be able to streamline that, get our patients in same day or next day, we actually improved 100% literally in our no-show rate.
So translating that into the current role, how are you thinking about the current sort of technology footprint as it relates to the role currently?
Absolutely. So as I look at this, one of the obstacles that we had was communicating with our patients, mainly through third-party applications. And it was just time. It was clicks, having to use another application, adding something onto a teammate each day to remind them to come in for an appointment, or having to pick up the phone, get a voicemail, right? Hey, how can we automate this, give time back to our teammates to focus more on the patients that are there in front of them, right? And so being able to strategically think about that, and that's where Chris Rathermel really helped me out because we had this problem. It was quasi working. We'd found workarounds around it, but when I'm in my locations, I could still see and talking with the teams. Hey, Chris, this is where I'm spending a ton of my time, right? And so I think, hey, how can we automate this, right? And so that's where Chris and I put our heads together, and with the guidance of our CEO Steve Priest, we thought about, hey, what about a Spero app, a way that we can engage a patient when they come into our clinics? How can we immediately be in contact with them? So we were able to create our Spero Anywhere app. And so when a patient now comes in, we're able to get them immediately signed into our app. And what that allows us to do is communicate with them. Obviously, they can communicate back to us, but it automates their appointment reminder. So we're giving time back to our teammates while also improving efficiencies to our patients.
I got you. I got you. So on the tactical side, how much of IT is causing potential technical or causing tactical issues that bubble up to you, or maybe that you know about that your teammates are having to deal with?
Sure. So a lot of it, I always say, it takes a margin to live your mission, right? And so with that, we want to make sure that we have the best processes possible to be able to submit our information right, translate into a bill and get paid. And so with that, a lot of issues that have popped up historically is, hey, what are the errors that are happening within a chart that are holding that up from getting billed? And because, hey, what you're having to do is get in contact with multiple folks. Hey, how can we scrub that instead, help make it more automated where it can be cleaner the first time out? And so that was frankly an issue that we've had to try and tackle and get better at. And with that, teaming up with Chris and his team, letting them know this problem. Hey, here's the problem point, and to be able to lay it out in layman's terms, right? And then Chris and his team get that and be able to go to the drawing board and figure out what are the pieces that are missing that we can integrate to make this seamless. And so that's something that we're working through right now, but making some great progress on.
Good deal. In that discussion, you mentioned conversation with Chris. Who else shares that kind of, or shares with you that thinking? Do you have others on your team who are invested in thinking about strategic ways of leveraging technology?
Absolutely. I try and any of my leaders, my facility administrators, and even my peers that run other markets, we're constantly collaborating, bouncing ideas. Hey, what are your pain points? Because we all have the same issues, right? And so one thing that I really enjoy about Spero and our environment is frankly that collaborative effort, because nobody's out on a island alone. We really encourage getting together, sharing that, collaborating, coming up with a solution.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you think about, obviously technology is an important part of the company's ability to deliver and to try to meet your goals. Do you pay attention to what kind of tech-based metrics are you using, or are you using any? And if so, are those generated by your team, or are you getting those from IT?
A couple of tech-based metrics that I personally look at is, hey, what is our answer rate with our phone calls, right? Because we do have our connection center, but then from that, there are things that our connection center is maybe outside of their scope, right? And so looking at, hey, what is our answer rate from our clinicians? Because we have patients that are calling in that may have questions about medications. Maybe they have a question about the app. They're having an issue with that. And so I'm very key on looking at our phone metrics as well as our EHR uptime or downtime, right? Because if the EHR is down, that means that we're relying on manual or paper processes, which is going to lead to duplicate information, right? Because you've got something written down, and then you have to go implement that and re-enter it into our system. And then lastly is really help desk tickets, because with that there are a menagerie of things that are going to come up in a teammate's working day, and being able to have a reliable way to get in touch with our IT team to get them back up and running as quickly as possible is very important. So those are a few of the tech-based metrics that I know that I look at really on a daily basis.
Gotcha. Okay. And right now, is IT providing those? Was that based on your request, or did they proactively bring those to you based on their understanding of the way you think about the business?
Well, Chris is a great forward thinker. I think that's why we get along so well, because he's proactively, really since the day that he came on board, because he and I started around the same time. And what Chris really brought in was that those data metrics, that measuring system, having a scorecard of what his team is doing, what the requests are, being able to report out on that. And so he and his team are very good at sending out updates really on a daily and weekly basis around all those metrics. And hey, they're automated.
Very good. So we talked a little bit about this around how you define success. You talked about patient retention. So I'm assuming that's still, that's first and foremost in your mind. Obviously, you need new patients, but then the best way to make that work is to keep them, right? Because the nature you just described, if you can't get them to 90 days, the likelihood of them falling off is pretty high, or at least not extending through the full treatment cycle, I guess maybe is the way that's maybe not the right way to call it, but that's the way I would think of it. With that in mind, or that metric in your brain, do you feel like, is that really kind of part of the company culture? Is that embedded in everybody's brain, or is that something that is really more at the operational side of the house that you guys feel like you have to work to bring the back office or the IT folks or other people into that vision?
Well, I would say that it started out operationally, but we're all driven to help these patients because of those stats that I threw out to you about this patient population. So I can say this is embedded across, it is everyone's focus. We're laser focused on retention. That's not only the people that are patient facing in our clinics, but from the IT team to our revenue operations team. It is a central focus Spero wide.
Gotcha. That's a simplicity that not all businesses have, that makes life easier from an operational perspective. That's just an outsider's opinion, but it certainly seems that way.
Absolutely. And again, that is what I really, really enjoy and like about Steve, our CEO, is that he is laser focused and transparent, and shares the good as well as the challenges that we have throughout the company. And I think that is so important because we're able to stay laser focused and united on one mission. You don't have people moving in different ways. We know where we need to go, and we're all laser focused to get there.
When you think about like technology, you've got some background in it, right? Having built a call center and kind of done some things that I'm guessing there are a number of people in your side of the operation who are not that comfortable with technology in the sense of what we're talking about. How do you go about helping them understand the importance that technology plays in your success? Or maybe you don't have to, but if you do, what's that look like?
Absolutely. Well, this is, I didn't realize it at the time early in my career how valuable my experience in healthcare consulting was, because what I focused on was a lot of project management, EMR implementations. And from that, yes, I was more on the tech side, but got to start to see how technology, I mean, literally our business is focused on our EHR, right? And the way that we treat patients. And so fast forward into operations, I already had a understanding that if something is off in our process or our flow, it has a very big impact on operationally how we're taking care of patients. And so from that, what I've been able to do is be able to kind of speak both languages because of my experience in healthcare or in the IT space. Being able to take what some people may be intimidated by when you're talking coding or SQL, right? And being able to translate that kind of into the business side, right? And being able to be that glue. And that has been, I think, something that has really aided me in my leadership journey to date.
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of times you're right. There's an intimidation factor. And I'm thinking of a clinician, who's medically trained, a nurse or a doctor, who's interacting with a variety of different technology systems, but may not be real comfortable with how those systems work. And then if something is not working the way they think it should, may struggle with the language to describe that, other than feeling frustration and saying, this damn thing doesn't work the way it's supposed to, right?
Absolutely. And I'll take it a step further because we all went through COVID. Our world was flipped upside down, right? And so with that, particularly in our space at Spero, what COVID meant to us was that, hey, a patient had to come into our facilities even during COVID because may have to drop off a urine drug specimen. Right now, when they got there, they would see a clinician remotely from within the office, but they were still confined to within these four walls. And so I was thinking, hey, how can we expand our access outside of these four walls, right? How do we gauge technology? And so trying to solve that piece. And so today that led to another creation, which is our virtual clinic. So the ability to treat a patient outside of our four walls. And so with that, being able to go talk to Chris and say, hey, here's the idea. How do we get to see patients outside of our clinic, right? Of course, there's Zoom, there's other technology platforms, but we've got to crack this piece on our drug testing, right? And so getting together and collaborating with our clinical services team found an ulterior solution. That's something called oral drug swabs, and that was it. The ability to administer an oral drug swab virtually, to be able to conveniently mail this to a patient, was a game changer for us because it allowed us. We have 15 locations in the state of Tennessee. However, since the creation of our virtual clinic, we've been able to expand outside of that footprint to get those underserved gaps where we may not have a physical footprint. And what that's also been able to do is allow it to be really a business development tool, right? Because we're able to see where patients are. And so as need pops up across the state, maybe it's in a city and we're noticing, hey, there's a big cluster of need here. What that allows us to do is to strategically go and plant a flag there, all
Right.
because we had the foresight to be able to use technology to our advantage versus opening a de novo in a place that we think is going to be successful.
Making a
There'd be
bet. Yeah.
making a bet. There's probably a slower run rate to getting to break even. Where with this, we've already got a tried and true method. We know we have a patient population there that's going to be in our
Yeah.
clinic doors day one, and so that is a initiative that I'm very proud of.
That makes sense. When you think about sort of IT, where as you think about the work that they're doing for for your operation, where do you feel like you're struggling right now? Where do you feel like you guys could make more progress in terms of leveraging technology?
I still think it's on the documentation side, right? Because right now you're almost at the uh, mercy of your EHR vendor, right? They have their packaged products that come in there, and there's canned reports and X, Y, and Z, and then you have to export these reports, right? Then you have to have a business analytics team to parse that
Yeah.
data out and get it in a meaningful format, because in my opinion, I feel like EHRs for the most part are geared more towards that single provider clinic, right? And not on a bigger scale. And so from that, it's, hey, how are you? We've got the information in the EHR. It's getting these different initiatives to take that information, put it in a better, more analytical report, frankly, to be able to access data quicker.
Gotcha. The flip side of that, where do you feel like they're really shining? Is it the app like you talked earlier, or is it data analytics? Where do you feel like they're really shining if you had to pick one?
So I think it's really on the application side, because it's something that is new. It's different. Not a lot of people are doing it. And so I like to be proactive versus reactive, because there's something to be said to be one of the first to market with something like that. So I think that what we're doing on that side of things will continue to be a big game changer in our space.
So a couple questions, we'll wrap it up. As you think about your IT partners, if you could get them to better understand something about what's going on inside the operational side of the house, what would that be? Maybe it's nothing, but what is it that you feel like you're working to try to get them to better understand?
So really, I think it's just as we talked about earlier, the day to day, how do we take operationally what we do on a day in, day out basis and make it better, right? And so from that, I would say one thing that we're doing now and trying to bridge that gap operationally is literally taking all of our defined operational processes. So bring them into my chair, literally taking them through the clinic, showing how the operations work, because they obviously know their side, right, of the business, what they're engaged with daily, but literally seeing how the other end users are using that, what the sticking points are. And then it's something magical happens. The light bulb goes off. Hey, you know what? I think we can do something really quick with this and make your life easier.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where we talked about the phone report earlier. It all stemmed from one of our IT teammates being in the clinic, a conversation. You know what? The phone seems to be ringing a lot. Yeah, the only way we can get a report is the CAN report right now. And I can't make much sense of it. Oh, well, you know what? I can go into the back end and I can create you an automated report. And now, just like that, on a weekly basis, I have by clinic what the pick up and abandon rate is.
Right.
And so I think the more that we continue to partner, engage in both sides, both operationally and on the tech side, truly just take a break. Because it's so easy to get locked in and laser focused on your day-to-day journey, right? I think that the more that we take a pause, understand what each side is doing. I mean, that's where all the collaboration has come from, is just literally taking a step back, going and having a conversation, being like, hey, I'm having a problem. You want to come over here to this clinic for me? Let me actually show you. It's one thing for me to tell you about it. Let me let you experience it,
right,
and to see what happens.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, that's a good one to sort of lead to the last question. So as you look ahead, what excites you about the next 2 to 3 years? And maybe on the inverse, or in the inverse, what scares you?
That's a good question. I think what excites me about what we're doing, is I feel like we've just scratched the surface, because we've talked about our app and what we're kind of looking to do from there. But I also think about the quality of care. So from this, how do we take the tools that we've already built and continue just to make it better, right? We're cracking retention, but from there, how do we better engage the patient? Because can we send them more detailed post-appointment instructions? Hey, with technology and the use of smartphones, are we able to even take something as simple as a podcast and push it to them? And so it's things like that that really excite me. I would say what scares me is frankly the fear of the unknown, right? And a good example is as I think about telehealth specifically within the addiction space. Um, there was legislation put into place actually this year, the PHE, when public health emergency, when it ended in May of this year, was going to kind of restrict the access that patients had to virtual care, right? What the regulation was going to say is that, hey, a patient actually had to come into the office at least one time a year, physically be present to continue their treatment. And this is a vulnerable population. There's a lot of barriers that a patient um, experiences. Could be one of the biggest ones is access to actually getting a ride to their appointment on a week to week basis. And so that was kicked down the can, but only for another year. And so as I look at that strategically, because we've had such a expansion in our telehealth program,
Right.
how is this influx going to affect the way that we're able to continue to treat patients through virtual care in the future? And so that's the biggest concern I have right now as we look
Yeah.
at into the future.
Yeah, the joys of being in a regulated business. You take the good with the bad, right? That's the way it is sometimes because the rules of the game may change, and you have to be prepped for that. But to your point, that'd be a bad thing for you guys, given especially the success you've had with pushing that forward in terms of expanding your market.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I always like to wrap up with kind of a personal question. Not personal, like it's not that personal, but it's non-business related, I guess maybe is a better way of describing it. So I'll ask you to share something you've read or watched recently that you think others maybe ought to check out.
Well, that's a good one. I'll get to it because everything that I'm reading. So everyone always says, "Hey, what do I do?" Right? And yes, my day job is healthcare, but I love real estate. Right? So I'm a big Robert Kiyosaki fan, and looking at real estate and developing that empire. But I don't know if I want to go that route for. I'll tell you what. Right now, I'm reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. So I'll go that route if that's all right.
That's old school. Yeah, no, for sure. In fact, there's probably people that are listening to this who've never heard of that book, but it's a classic for sure.
Absolutely. So right now I'm reading Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And so what I really like about this particular book is it's an oldie, right? But what I've learned is that history repeats itself. And so to be able to go and look at what the men that really built America, what their thinking was, what their mindset was as we look at that industrial age, and we've moved now to a technical age, and just their thinking and their forethought is really impressive to me, because the thing that scares me to death is becoming a dinosaur, not continuing to evolve and change, right? And so I like to look back at the successful folks in our nation's history and really think, hey, what did they have that made them successful that I can continue to better learn and get better each day, so that I do not become what I hate, and someone that fights change,
Right.
but continues to embrace change, frankly.
Very good. Well, with that, Chris, we will let you get back to running operations for your group at Spero. Thanks again for the time. We really appreciate you coming on Cut the Shit, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Bryan. I enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would become a subscriber wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, that would really help us out. Or you can just go old school and tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, and hell, anybody else who you think might want to hear something like this to listen in. If you're on social media, make sure to follow us on TikTok at CutTheShitPod, all one word, where we post lots of clips from the podcast. And last but not least, you can also watch the YouTube version of the show on our YouTube channel, @Plow Networks. Until next time, take care and have a great day.